Okay, folks, did you know we have a newsletter? We want to invite you to subscribe or click on the show notes to get it every month because we love giving meaningful book recommendations that you can read with kids, games for family game night, and great conversation starters. So check out our newsletter.
Hey, friends. Welcome to the Raising Boys and Girls podcast. I'm Sissy Goff.
And I'm David Thomas.
And I'm Melissa Trevathan.
And we're so glad you've joined us for this conversation. Let's dive in. Well, I'm so excited about our guest on the podcast today. Our guest today is my co-host and dear friend and colleague, Sissy Goff, talking about her brand new book, first children's book ever, written about another beloved colleague of ours.
Yes.
And let's begin, before we jump in and talk about that book, by having you, for folks, because we have a lot of new listeners who've joined our podcast, which we're so excited about, likely may not know the story of how you found your way to this work. And so will you start out just by telling that story and a little bit about you?
Yes. Well, I'll go back a little ways and say that my family had a family business, and my grandfather, when he was, I think, probably in his 20s, read about these roads that were going to go. This dates me. Kids that are listening, this is how old I am and my grandfather was. These roads that were going to be going all over the country, and they were called, you might can guess, highways and interstates. And this article said any business you can do along these highways will be really great. And so my grandfather jumped in early on the Holiday Inn business, which used to be a really thriving chain of hotels. There are definitely still some that are.
Yes.
And so our family got really involved in Holiday Inns, and my dad and two uncles were taking over from our grandfather, and I think my dad really wanted me to go into the Holiday Inn business. And I spent 2 summers working at a Holiday Inn and decided, no, that was not the career for me. And even leading up to that time, I felt like I really wanted to help people. And for those of you who are listening that are under the age of 25, probably, maybe 30, there are these things that take place every afternoon on television that when David and I were growing up, really every kid watched, to the degree that my parents, I'm sorry to say this out loud, but my parents let me miss school and even watch very special soap opera episodes where Bo and Hope were getting married, different people were getting married, Luke and Laura. And on Days of Our Lives, which was one of my very favorite soap operas, not your average Bluey episode, but on Days of Our Lives, one of my favorite characters was named Marlena, and Marlena was a child psychologist. Now, back when we were growing up, there weren't all these awesome counselors you could go to and talk about your feelings. We hadn't really heard of it, neither one of us. And so she's the first person I ever heard of doing anything like that. So we have talked about someday I want to get Deidre Hall on our episode and say, I'm so grateful that you were a child psychologist, even though you were possessed at some point. There are all kinds of things that took place in your lifetime. You still really helped shape my career. So that's where the origin, I think, was birthed. And then I was super involved in Young Life, loved it, and just kept, I feel like God opened door after door after door of getting to help kids and families.
So kids' parents today have figured out maybe there's better things to watch for kids to watch than soap operas. But your parents can feel fantastic about having let you watch soap operas because look what that inspired.
Isn't that the truth?
How many people have benefited from you watching that soap opera and deciding I might like to make a career out of that field? Thank you, Marlena Brady.
Brady.
Oh, Marlena. All right, let's talk dogs now.
Okay.
You are the reason we have therapy dogs at Daystar, and I don't know that everybody knows that story. So will you talk about Noelle?
Yes.
We talk about the story of getting her and how she became Daystar's first therapy dog.
Yes. So I I was 22. I have a little sister a whole lot younger than I am. She's 16 years younger than me. And when I was 22 and Kathleen was 6, our parents decided to get a divorce. And that first Christmas, my mom knew that Kathleen and I would be really sad and it would feel pretty different. And so she told me that she wanted to get Kathleen a puppy and put her under the Christmas tree. And I was so excited about it. And so I went with her to pick out this puppy. And I'll never forget, it was at a hair salon. And this woman also was breeding dogs. And she brought out these 2 teeny white balls of fluff that were Maltese. And they had very different personalities. And one of them was a lot more active and bigger. And I said, Mom, you need to get her this one. And we drove home and I said, you need to put her in a box under the tree and let her open the box and not have any idea what it is. Well, little did I know that my mom, it's going to make me cry telling the story, but little did I know that my mom had done all this back work and she bought both puppies. And so they spent the night next door with my aunt and uncle Christmas Eve. And then Christmas morning, there was one of those ornament boxes where the handle pops out. And I remember looking in the handle and seeing these 2 little black eyes. And I just was so excited for Kathleen to get this puppy. And so it was time for her to open the box. And Mom said, go over and open that one. And then she said, Sissy, why don't you go with her? And I remember thinking, why are you telling me to do this? I just want to watch. But I went over and we knelt down side by side and opened this box. And there were both little white faces looking up at us with a sign that said, Sisters for the Sisters, the big ones for Sissy. The big ones for Sissy and the little ones for Kathleen. And it was just the best. And it totally changed that Christmas for us. And as a side note, parents, if you're listening, when Kathleen did visitation, when she'd go back and forth from my mom's to my dad's, she always took Snowball with her. And it was such a great, I think even therapeutically, it was such a great transitional anchoring force in her life. And Noelle certainly changed mine and changed Daystar's. And there was a day a couple years later where I think I had somebody working on my house. And so I couldn't have Noelle there home alone. And so I brought Noelle to work with me. And that day happened to be a day that I met with a very, very, very sad teenage girl. And I was concerned enough about this girl that I felt like I needed to step out of the room and call her mom and have her come and meet us. And so I told the girl that I needed to do that. Noelle was in there. And I walked out and called her mom and asked her to come to the rest of the appointment. And when I walked back in, Noelle had jumped up in this girl's lap and was licking her tears. And I told Melissa, who's our dear friend and the founder of Daystar, about that later. And she said, I want you to bring her every day. And so 16 years of Noelle working at Daystar and kicked off our whole therapy dog, which now we have, is it 6?
I just went downstairs and looked at the pictures, the new pictures hanging in our lobby. There's 7.
7 therapy dogs. And I mean, I can't count the amount of times I walk through the lobby with all of my dogs. This has happened. And people know the dogs and don't have a clue who I am. I feel like you've had the same experience. It's just the sweetest.
Yes.
They make such a difference.
And now a quick break to hear from one of our incredible sponsors who make the podcast available.
It's almost summertime in Tennessee, which means heat, humidity, and hydration.
We have got to drink more water. Speaking of which, we all know how important it is to filter the water we drink, but why don't we think the same way about the water we shower in?
Thanks to our friends at Jolie, we can. Jolie is a beauty wellness company that purifies the water we shower in for better skin, hair, and overall well-being.
Jolie's filtered shower head is best in class for removing chlorine and heavy metals, clinically proven to reduce hair shedding in 81% of people, lab tested to reduce hair frizziness by 40%, lab tested to maintain color retention, lab tested to protect the hair surface layer.
Jolie shower heads have a beautiful, sleek design, the perfect combination of form and function.
Jolie still gives strong water pressure, this was very important to me, and fits all showers as the plumbing pipe size is universal.
Jolie will give you your best skin and hair guaranteed. Head to jolieskinco.com/RBG to try it out for yourself with free shipping.
And if you don't like it, you can return your Jolie for a full refund within 60 days, no questions asked.
David, let's talk a little about nutrition.
Uh-oh, is this an intervention? Is this about my queso consumption?
It is not an intervention, but it may make you think about your queso consumption. Nutrition is not about dieting, but how you truly fuel your body day in and day out. Whether you're aiming for peak energy, managing specific health goals, or simply wanting to feel good in your body, what you eat is fundamental. It affects your energy levels, your mood, how well you sleep, and of course, your long-term health.
Queso makes me feel so good in the moment and not so good at bedtime.
Well, I've got an idea. Faye Nutrition connects you directly with registered dietitians, the real food and nutrition experts, for personalized nutrition counseling tailored specifically to you. And the best part is that all dietitians on Faye take insurance, so 95% of people pay $0 for their sessions. That's right, $0.
This podcast is sponsored by Faye. Faye matches you one-on-one with a dedicated dietitian who helps you understand your body's unique needs. Your personal dietitian will work with you to create sustainable, evidence-based programs, not just quick fixes, to help you build healthy habits and achieve your health goals.
So whether you're trying to lose weight, dealing with low energy, digestive discomfort, managing conditions like PCOS or diabetes, navigating food allergies, cutting out too much queso, or you just want clarity amidst all the confusing diet noise, getting personalized guidance could be the foundational support you need.
At Faye, they believe expert nutrition counseling should be accessible to everyone. It's so simple to find a dietitian who fits your needs and to instantly check your insurance coverage before signing up. And like we said, the vast majority of people pay $0 for their sessions.
Having a personalized nutritionist used to cost big bucks, but not anymore with Faye. Listeners of Raising Boys and Girls can qualify to see a registered dietitian for as little as $0 by visiting faynutrition.com/RBG. That's FAYNUTRITION.com/RBG.
One last time, that's faynutrition.com/RBG, and make sure you use our URL so they know we sent you. And now back to the show. Hearing you tell that story is a reminder that Lucy had big shoes to fill.
She did.
Yeah. But she had a signature wave that was all her own. So I want you to talk about that wave, and will you also talk about a fear she had?
Yes. So the first day I had a thing that happened when I was growing up, if I have not had a chance to tell you the story. And when my mom really didn't like for us to be sad, as is evidence of getting Noel that first Christmas. And when we lost a dog when I was growing up, Mom, I don't even know how she did this. It was magic. She would go out and buy the same kind of dog the same day and name it the same thing, which is just, I don't even know what to say about that. So we had several dogs that were the first version and the second version. And when Noel died, I didn't want to move quite that fast, but I also didn't want to wait too long. And so we were in Arkansas. I was home for Christmas and lost Noel. And Kathleen, my sister, helped me find this adorable dog online, and we went to meet her. And the first day that I met her, she held up one little paw at me. And come to find out, she liked to do that. And so when we started dog training, the dog trainer said, go ahead and call that a wave and reinforce her every time she does that. Praise her when she does it. And so Lucy had a wave, and I could hold her a certain way. We might have to link a video to the show notes. I could hold her a certain way, and she would wave. If I said, Lucy, wave at so-and-so, she would wave every single time. And
it was magical.
It was. For kids who were coming here the first time, it just would soften anyone.
Yeah.
It was precious. And so Lucy worked with me for 15 years, and that wave stayed with her until the very end. And there were so many amazing things Lucy did, but one of her biggest fears, which we talk about the wave and we talk about her fears in the book, Lucy Learns to Be Brave. But one of her biggest fears, I discovered, we do something called parent consults where we meet with parents. We're talking about how their kids are doing. And I was meeting with this mom, and I developed the hiccups, which feels like a very normal thing. And I noticed Lucy just staring at me very fearfully. And then all of a sudden she was in this woman's lap. I didn't know if the woman liked dogs or not. And then I was in an armchair. She jumps up on the back of the chair and puts her paws in the woman's hair because she was so afraid of the hiccups. And for her whole life, anytime I would hiccup near her or anyone would, she would start shaking just uncontrollably, to the degree that when I hiccup, I still have kind of an automatic response like, is Lucy okay? She's not even with me anymore. But
Well, and it's such a great reminder for kids listening that the things we're afraid of don't always completely make sense, do they?
Yes.
But they are big regardless. And it's one of the many reasons I love this book, Lucy Learns to Be Brave, that we're going to keep talking about. And in thinking about it, you do this really great job of explaining to kids how fear plays tricks on us.
Yes.
So will you talk some about that?
Yes. So for those of you all who are listening, it's really important. We're going to talk about a little science for just a second. So when you are at home getting to do something you love and you're not worried at all, you have blood going throughout your whole brain, through all the blood vessels in your brain, including they go to this thing called the prefrontal cortex. That's the front of your brain that helps you think rationally. So it helps things make sense. You really think through in good, healthy ways, think rationally, and manage your emotions. So helps us have self-control, not get too angry, too worried, any of those things. And so that really helps. That part of our brain's really important. When we get really worried, sometimes when we get really mad, the blood vessels in our brain constrict, which means they get a whole lot smaller, and they move the blood away from that thinking, reasoning part of our brain to what's called the amygdala. And the amygdala is the fight, flight, or freeze part of our brain, which is why sometimes when you get a little bit nervous, all of a sudden you can think something terrible is going to happen or what you did was horrible when it wasn't really. It wasn't that big of a deal. It's why we can tend to get really angry sometimes for things that are kind of small too. And so what happens is the more often our brain does that, actually that amygdala in our brain gets larger and it starts to play tricks on us because it's enlarged. And it starts to make us think little deals are medium size and medium sized deals are huge. It makes everything feel bigger than it has to be. It plays tricks on us and even lies to us. And so in the book, I talk about, I have even a thermometer that helps us be aware of what things really are not that big of a deal and what things are a medium-sized deal and what things do we need to be more aware of, that we need to use strategies to calm ourselves back down that help us literally get back to the thinking part of our brain. Because even just breathing can help us do that.
So good. Okay, we wanted to help as many kids on the front side of development as possible, which is why we wanted to write these books. And talk about why you think stepping in early is so important.
Well, early work we can do about anything really helps us. And there's so much research about early intervention parents, about worries and about anxiety even. And so the more we can learn early on, kids that are listening, the more we can do things like square breathing is my favorite way to teach it with kids. I did have a girl one time say, can you do flower breathing? You can draw any shape you want. But what you're going to do, we're going to teach it real quick right now. You're going to put your hand on your leg and you're going to draw a really slow square. So with the first line of the square, you're going to breathe in for 4 seconds, 3, 4, pause in the corner and hold it for 4 seconds, 2, 3, 4. Next line, breathe out, 2, 3, 4, pause, 2, 3, 4. In, 2, 3, 4. I can't talk and breathing at the same time. Pause, 2, 3, 4. And then keep going with the square. 20 seconds, y'all, changes what's happening in our brain. And so just like our brain actually enlarges, we can shrink it back if we're doing that kind of thing regularly. So we want to do as much as we can early on to not only teach our bodies to calm themselves back down, but also to calm down our thoughts and to work with our thoughts and to remind ourselves that we can do scary things. One of my favorite things I talk about in the book, y'all, that's really important is that I have 2 nephews, a 6-year-old nephew named Henry and a 3-year-old nephew named Whit, who are both amazing fellas. And we took Henry to Disney World for the first time when he was 4. And y'all that have been to Disney World, you know, Pirates of the Caribbean is kind of scary. There are a lot of rides that are kind of scary, but that's one of them. And Henry and I and his mom and dad were walking down the tunnels, and we were going around and around, and it was getting darker and darker. And Henry's face was getting more and more scared. And I looked at Henry and said, Henry, a little bit scared, a whole lot of fun. And any of you who have ever been on a roller coaster or any ride like that know that that's true. And sometimes we have to let ourselves be a little bit scared to get to the backside and realize how fun things can really be. Not only how fun things can be, but how proud of ourselves we are when we do hard things. And so that's really what this book is about.
I love that. A little bit of scared, a whole lot of fun. Okay. You talk about trust in different ways. Will you explain that?
Yes. So the whole book is really about Lucy starting to understand how deeply loved she is. And if nobody has reminded you of this today, kids, parents, any age, you are deeply loved. You're deeply loved by your people, by your family, and you are particularly deeply loved by God. We have a little version of a summer retreat program called Hopetown. And one of our favorite things that Melissa ever talks about at Hopetown, she talked about how courage isn't the antidote to anxiety. So courage isn't the opposite or even the answer to anxiety, but trust is. Because trust means I am loved enough that I can do hard things, that no matter what I'm doing, no matter where I am, God loves me and he's going to take care of me. And when we remember that, we really can step out and do hard things. And I hope that was a lot of Lucy's life. She knew that I loved her and that she could do hard, scary things, whether it was waving, whether it was facing hiccups, it didn't even matter, in that love. And y'all, the same is true for every single one of us.
Yes. So you mentioned the thermometer that's in the back of the book. Will you talk about how parents and kids could use that tool together?
Yes. So it starts with Lucy's thermometer, and it has big dog, loud noise, different things, hiccup, the thing that made her most afraid. And my hope is that kids and parents together, there's a thermometer with tick marks on it, and you can draw what scares you a little and what scares you a lot. And then the hope is out beside those things, you can come up with your mom or dad a list of 10 things you can do that help bring your thermometer back down. It might be breathing together. It might be breathing on your own. It might be playing with your dog. It might be going for a walk. It might be drawing. There's so many different things we can do to help our thermometers come back down. But it's so important for all of us.
I love that. Tell me one thing that families could be doing right now at home to be practicing courage.
Okay, well, I'm going to throw in another 2 books as well that I think can be helpful on this. For girls, Braver, Stronger, Smarter. For boys, Strong and Smart. If you're a little bit older, I think anybody of any age can read the Lucy and Owen books. Yes. A follow-up could be either of those 2 books based on if you're a girl or a boy. And in Braver, Stronger, Smarter, I have a ladder. Now, you can make a ladder at home. I want you to pick something that you really want to do, but you're just a little scared of it. It could be spending the night out. It could be going for a bike, learning to ride a bike. It could be learning to swim. Anything. And what you do is you put that at the very top rung of the ladder, and then you come up with little steps toward it. So spending the night out, maybe you spend the night with your grandparents for one night first, and then you spend the night with your aunt or uncle or your really good close family friends. We basically baby step our way, rung by rung, on the ladder towards doing the scary thing. And then we want to do a lot of celebrating when we get there.
That's so good. All right, what if there is a kid or a grown-up listening right now who has been resisting being brave? Will you talk about brave beads?
Yes, that is one of my very favorite things. I think I talk about this 3 times a week in my office. So what I would recommend doing, parents that are listening, kids, plug your ears for a second. We have a lot of kids, David and I both do, who do not want to do the scary things, don't even want to do the breathing. And so if those things are hard for you, a great system could be brave beads, brave marbles, brave pom-poms. What do you do typically with boys?
Common coins.
Calming coins. It can be anything. But what I would typically recommend is go to Michael's or some store together to pick out whatever the token is, because if they get to pick everything they can do where they're investing in this process, the more invested they will be. So let them pick that out with you. And then even thinking about that ladder, every step on the ladder, they get a brave bead. To the degree that if it's hard to move toward the ladder, breathing gets a brave bead. Going to the calm down corner, which you talk about.
Yes, and strong and smart.
And strong and smart. Any of those things, they're going to get a bead. And then you decide ahead of time, okay, here's what you can trade 10 beads in for. And maybe that's a sticker book. Here's what you can trade 25 beads in. Maybe you get to stay up 15 minutes later. Here's what you get to trade 50 in. And you work your way towards doing some really fun things. And parents, I want you to get a mason jar or some kind of clear jar. Let them watch the beads accrue in their room because, again, they're going to be more invested in the process if they're really in it every step of the way.
I'm going to Jenny's Ice Cream when I get 20 brave beads. That's where I'm going. All right. Speaking of food, we and kids listening, every podcast episode that we do with something fun and food related.
Ooh.
So I'm going to turn the question on you today.
Okay.
And part 1 is queso or guac. Part 2 is what's your current favorite taco?
You know, my heart always leans towards queso, and I keep reading about the benefits of avocados.
Yes.
I read about cognitively all the things they do for us just this week. And we know they also help with worry and anxiety. We had a neuropsychologist who told our staff that. So I'm trying to lean into my guac era. And taco, I had a cauliflower taco the other day that was fantastic. So trying to branch out in those spaces too.
That's so good.
Thank you for having me, David.
I can't tell you how excited I am about this Lucy book. And parents listening, you want to grab multiple copies because you're obviously going to want one for your family, but you're going to love giving this as birthday gifts. You're going to love giving this as shower gifts with friends who are having new babies. Like
both
so
books,
many ways to
together.
celebrate Luciano, and you're exactly right.
David, what a team we have that we get to call friends who help make this podcast possible.
Amanda Young, our operations manager.
Chris Starrett, our engineer.
Our management team at H Squared.
We are thrilled to be a part of the That Sounds Fun network.
Our music was created by the insanely talented Dave Haywood of Lady A.
And if this podcast felt helpful to you, please consider subscribing, liking, sharing, all the things.
We are grateful for you and cheering you on always.